Hello there and welcome to this second webinar on getting the most from Connect Interactive. I published this as an advanced webinar simply because I'm going to take you to some areas where if you're just starting out you might not necessarily have focused a lot of time. So today we're going to look at some strategic bits and bobs. We're going to look at monitoring accuracy. But first of all I want to talk to you about grade point selection because it's quite key to be able to manipulate your grade points so that you're getting the analysis that you want. So we're going to start off in this blue box. Now you can simply choose exam results or you can choose monitoring grades. I'm going to go to the mix and match. So basically you can have any 4 grade points that you want and you can have exam or monitoring in there. Now, as with the last webinar, I'm just lagging a year behind you because I'm recording this before results day. So I'm going to just select a few different types of grade point trends and show you what you can do with it. So the first one I'm going to show you is this is my current year 13s before they go into the exam. And I'm just going to select a few grade points, and that's their MPZ. And I'm going to select a few grade points before they went into the exam across the year, and I'm going to add to the beginning of that last summer's outcomes. So if I OK that and go into the subject view, what I've now got is I've got a trend line that's giving me what the subject got last summer and then what they've been predicting across this year. So I can start to see stories emerging if I have concerns. Look at chemistry there, they got a 5 last year and then 7, 7, 8. So I might be a little bit worried. There's 34 students in that class and they're predicting a grade 8, when in actual fact they got pretty much bang on national average last year. So a bit of concern there. On the other hand, with something like geography, for example, they got a grade 8 and are now predicting a 5. So I might have a different conversation with the head of geography in terms of that story there. So it's quite useful to pop an exam point in as one of your grade points so that you've got a reference point to go back to. One of the other types of mix and match that you can do is what we call a monitoring sandwich. So what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to flick some grade points around. There's my outcomes. If we just pretend that this is subject review from last year, that's my summer outcomes. That's the year 13's just, oh, sorry, wrong grade point. So that's my outcomes. What I want to see is what my year 13's were being predicted before they went in. So let's just choose a year 13 grade point. And then I want to see what the results were from the previous year. So what I've got now, I'll just explain that again, is I've got last summer, I've got a monitoring point from this year, and I've got this summer's outcomes. So again, so this is what we call a monitoring sandwich, where I'm looking at, are there any subjects that are jumping out at me where I might be concerned about some predictions. So look at biology. They've got 5 and a 6 as actual outcomes. Their predictions in year that year were a grade 3. So there was an over prediction going on in biology. The business studies department were pretty much spot on. But my chemists were being a little bit pessimistic, it would seem, and they actually achieved better than they were predicting to achieve. So it's kind of showing you what you can do with these grade point selectors and putting them together in interesting ways so that you actually see some outcomes that might give you some discussion topics with some staff. Last one I'm going to show you is I'm going to keep that last summer's grade point on there, and then I'm just going to put some mock results on. That's the raw mock grade from my current year 13, and then their predicted grade resulting from that mock. So again, some more stories. Okay, so you would expect potentially your raw mock results to be slightly bluer because they're in January and students are not doing necessarily all of the revising that they would do for the final exam. But you're looking for trends where history, for example, and government and politics, you know, they've got grade 9, grade 8, and they're predicting quite a jump. Now remember that this score is 0.2 represents a grade, okay? So the Government and Politics Department are basically going from 0.59 to 0.98, which is around about a 0.4 jump, so that's 2 grades per student. So that's what they're saying that they're going to achieve in the actual as opposed to the mocks. Now you might have some concerns about that if you didn't know that the Government and Politics was a red department last year. So you might be less concerned because you trust that the Government and Politics Department have got intervention strategies that's going to make that happen. History, on the other hand, you might have a little bit of concern there because they were a grade 5, they're predicting a 4 and their mocks were an 8. So you get the idea that actually sandwiching some grade points in there gives you some discussion topics to have and some questions just to ask of subject leaders. Just as a matter of interest, if I pop into biology here, my subject leaders can have the same sorts of conversations with their teaching sets, okay? So the classroom teachers, and you can do the same sort of thing with them and look at some trends over time. Okay, going back to that subject overview. Okay, so I'll keep those grade points on. I might want to just filter down by teaching sets. I showed you this last time in the last webinar, but you can expand down the teaching sets here and see how they are doing in relation to the main subject. What I didn't show you are my options for printing. So if I click on the PDF or the Excel, I have options I can rename that whatever I would like to. But I can print the subject pages. So what I mean by that is these are your PDF reports and the subject pages from those. So to save me popping into every single subject, I can just use this export button to pretty much rebuild my report, a PDF report for my monitoring. So as you know, we don't do PDF reports for monitoring. This is the way around it. I can print all subject pages. I can print subject and teaching set pages, as you can see. Now, depending on how I'm using this, I can include student names if I'm using it with my staff in school, or I can anonymize my students, or I can take them out altogether if, for example, I'm working with my governing body or a different level that I don't want student names to be on the report. So just a nice way of getting all your subject pages out in one go if you've just added a monitoring point. Okay, so that's the show teaching sets. Now, the other thing that I didn't show you in the last one, and what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is I am just going to simplify this a little bit by having one monitoring point on there. I'll just leave that January point there. I'm going to add a comparison. I'll just do a quick comparison. I'll do female-male comparison and apply that. And for my subject overview then, I've got all students, and then I've got female, and I've got male, but there's a little button here that shows show all students in one table, and bingo, I have got a little comparison table there that I can look at how my girls and how my boys are performing in each of those subjects. So with using that comparison then, I can do a quick comparison group, or I can do a multi-layer comparison group as I showed you in the last video. I can export that to Excel and I would basically get an Excel sheet that looks like that I can do some manipulation with. Okay, so that's the subject overview and the comparisons. So what I'm going to do is reset that. And I'm going to go back to the home page. Now, let me just add in, again, just a monitoring point trend. So April and January, and I'll just put on last summer's outcomes as well. And I'm going to pop into the strategic section now. So I've got last summer's outcomes and 2 monitoring points for this year 13. And go into strategic here. So I'm going to start with an ALPS template. I can put individual pages in if I want at A level. And I'm going to choose a main provider report. So I'm going to add another comparison group here. Again, I'm just going to stick to gender because it's nice and easy. There's only two there, two options. And so create that report. And what that does is it pulls up for me the pages from the strategic area of the PDF. So these are my sort of whole school indicators. And as we go through here, you can see that there's various different indicators there. Now, I put a comparison on. So I put female. So that's my female version of my strategic overview, and that's my male version of the strategic overview. But if I want to see those side by side, there's a little arrow that I can link the two together. So I can actually have a look and see if there's any gaps or differences between my different groups. And I can see here that my girls, the quality indicator for this monitoring point here is showing a grade 7 and the boys are a 6. And the red teaching and learning is, there's a big gap there. And in fact, actually, it's the opposite from the gap, from these gaps that were in last summer's overview. So there's just some questions arising there that you might want to expand on and look at in a bit more detail. Like the PDF report, then you've got your individual years banded by ability, where you can look at for the current grade point that's there. You can look at the trend. The table, the banded by ability table, is here, and it's the middle table, points per subject, that you're interested in. Okay, so that gives you an overview of your prior attainment bands and how your students are performing. Not so well, according to this monitoring. But you can look at last summer and you can see that your top 2 prior attainment groups there actually didn't do terribly well. So that trend seems to be maintained across these monitoring points. Again, I put a banded by ability filter on there so I can view them side by side and see if there's any difference. And actually you can see that in last summer it was my high prior attaining girls and not my high prior attaining boys so much that were causing that blue. So the next thing I might want to do is to pop into the student performance overview and check out which subjects those girls were doing. So let's do that. And that's the top. So I can save that and share it with staff. I won't do that today. So if I go into my student group, here, my performance group, I'm just going to change that. That was last summer that I was after, which was there. And I want to look at my girls, apply that. And I want to look at my high prior achieving girls. So if I click on female there they are. And it's this group here. Look, there's lots of blues and blacks. And there's a mix of subjects. So there's not any necessarily jumping straight out at me, but those are the girls. Look at the horrible mosaic colours on that. Those are the girls that actually underperformed. They didn't underperform by much, just a grade really, but it was enough to bring your overall scores down. Okay, so that's the strategic area. Just a final look at monitoring accuracy. You've got 2 options here. Actually, I'll just change that trend because it wasn't. Yep, there we go. Okay, so what I've got here is I've got the historical, which is giving me that was my year 13s before they went into their exam, and that's what they got in their exam. And it's just showing me the difference. It's just so that I don't have to do work really. And I can sort that by, there we go, PE were the biggest over predictors. So they actually dropped 0.23, which is a whole grade per student. So not great for those 6 students and their UCAS entries. Whereas the other way round, you've got some BTEC sport there, expert in sport, where again they're actually overproducing by a grade per entry based on predictions. Economics there, look. Grade 8 to a grade 3 with those students actually saying that they all improved by on average a grade per student. So that's a historical. Now this in year 1 is going to give me a trend over a number of monitoring points. Just ignore those in there, they're empty because they're actually year 11s. I can just choose whichever monitoring points that I want here. So let me just do that. I'm going to say talk about year 13. Let's have a look. So what I've got here is I've got a group of grade points which are year 13 across the year, and then their final outcome. Now, crucially here, I get an up or down arrow to show how each grade point relates to the one before it. I've got the difference that, again, I can sort by here. So the biology department are vastly fluctuating. They started off on a grade 7, that's their MPZ, and actually they got a grade 6, and in the middle they were all over the place. And that graph shows you that. Okay, so what you want, I suppose, is a flat line graph there, or an increasing trend line like this that shows progression over time. It's very important that you understand, that your staff understand which grades they're due to put in here so that it gives you an accurate picture. But suffice to say, you do not want to see that. So we pop into biology, we'll be able to see that grade very clearly. And then what I've got is I've got some teaching sets here. So if I just put on my 13 teaching sets, it superimposes the teaching sets over the top of the subject overview, so that I can get a feel for where my teaching sets are in relation to my overall subject outcome. So that's the monitoring accuracy area. Again, you can be as creative as you want with those grade sets in both of those areas. So hopefully that's helped just take you on another step in Connect Interactive this afternoon. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.